Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to the JAKIB postgame show. A Week 10 edition. Eagles just absolutely obliterated the division rival Dallas Cowboys. Joined now by Dan Sileo. We'll be joined by John McMullen in just a couple seconds here. He's checking in on the show. Big Sills. Eagles blew that team off the page, man. 34-6. My prediction was 31-10. I was pretty close. I think yours was 34-16 or 17. You were pretty close.
38-17 I had in that game. And, I mean, the talent level between the Eagles and the Cowboys is so far right now. It's incredible. Yeah. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys right now, I don't know who has a worse set of rosters right now, the Giants or the Cowboys. But man, I'll tell you what, that division right now with those two teams, I can't see how that football team gets better. I mean, they weren't even playing good football, like John said in the pregame show, even when they had those guys. I mean, that's as bad a Dallas Cowboy roster as I've seen in a long time. I mean, honest to God, the way that they played today and not the clean game that Jalen played today, you could have beat that team with Kellen Moore quarterbacking. I mean, they're so bad. I mean, dude, the defense, John, I thought played as hard as they could, the Cowboys, as long as they could. And it was just the power of the offense with the Eagles, and they just ran them off the scoreboard.
No doubt. Johnny Mac, your first takeaways, Eagles win 34-6. A pitiful showing from the Dallas Cowboys there, and not a good football team. John, your first takeaways from that game.
Yeah, I wish I was doing Cowboys 365 this week. I would love to rip that team. It's no fun ripping the Eagles now because they're playing too well. So, that was easier than expected. You know, you kind of got a feeling once the Eagles, the first half obviously wasn't great, but you never got the feeling that Dallas had any chance even with it. And once they scored late, it was like, this team's just not capable of coming back from any kind of deficit. So the minute it became a two-score game, which I mentioned at halftime, essentially it was over. I mean, at one point, I think the number was 45 yards. Well, that's what he ended up with. 45 yards passing on 23 attempts. That is tough to do. That's
got to be a record bad right there.
With all due respect to the Eagles defense, which was great again, and I just mentioned Zach Bond. Of course, I fat fingers. I put 19 first 10 weeks. That's the best free agent signing in football, and I mean that.
Yeah.
When you factor in, they're paying a guy $1.6 million.
How about not only the best free agent sign, but the best free agent find? This guy had never played like that. He had never played interior line. I mean, they were thinking of putting him out on the perimeter and having him as an edge rusher. Then Vic, during the camp, when you were calling it, you were saying that, hey, they're going to move him inside. Let's see if he can play. And all of a sudden, this guy's not playing just like a Pro Bowler, John. He's playing like the All-Pro.
Yeah, it really is. 2 forced fumbles today, fumble recovery, tackle for losses all over the field. It's unbelievable. You know, somebody brought up Patrick Robinson, and Patrick was a special story as well. Being the best nickel cornerback in football, sort of a reclamation project. But back during the Super Bowl season, but Patrick was a first round pick. He was supposed to be a really big time player. He was, and he was also a slot player. And even though that they play more now than they ever have, it's still not a full time player. Zach Bond's out there every play, except when they're resting their starters. Everything went to plan.
Yeah,
Pittsburgh steals a game. Commanders may or may not have gotten screwed. Boy, I can tell you it's a bad spot with Zach Ertz. He might have not gotten it, but they had him like a yard.
I know.
Like,
that was a brutal spot.
Why at least respot it and measure? I think it was a couple inches short anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. But anyway.
It was a 60-minute game, though, John, to your point that they had to play the Commanders in a really tough one there. Yeah. And kind of the Eagles were coasting from the third quarter on in a way.
Yeah, really. Once they scored that first touchdown in the third
quarter,
quarter,
like you said. Yeah, John, you were right. If they would have got a safety, John, that game was over. They could not come back from that.
Yeah. It's like, and, I brought up when Cooper Rush played in 2022, but again, that was a really good Cowboys team that had everything around him, and he could just manage the game. He couldn't do that today. And when you had to make, but that's why Trey Lance, I don't know if Trey Lance can play a little bit. And don't get me wrong, if he played the entire game, the Eagles are still boat racing this team. But you got a better chance with a guy who can do some things on his own when you're this bad. Boy, Cowboys are a mess right now.
Hey, John, how can you be as bad at the quarterback position, not having a viable backup and not having any kind of running back? I mean, Elliott puts the ball in the back of the end zone. I mean, they had chances in that first half to get 14 points. They fumbled it
short fields.
I mean, and it was just like you said, I never felt that game was in jeopardy, no matter what some of the turnovers that Hurts had in the game. And the only criticism that I'll make right now with Jalen, man, holding on to that ball.
Yeah, I mentioned that at halftime. It didn't matter, but that's annoying. That's annoying.
It's the progression reading. I mean, he holds on to that ball way too long for me. I mean, and the old line's giving him 4 seconds to sit back in the pocket. I mean, he's got to be better at that.
Yeah, and it's tough to nitpick because, like, even me, I'm sitting here and I had an issue with that too, Sills, and I brought it up at halftime where I'm watching him hold on to that ball. The dude was 14 and 20 for 202.
Tanner,
4 touchdowns today at 56 yards.
That hard to nitpick.
It's gonna haunt
the
you.
Cowboys suck.
Right, and John, I think that's the real fear is that it haunts you versus the good teams.
It's not, to me, it's not about this game. It's about where you want to go.
Right.
And right now I'm hyper focused on Detroit, and we'll see how they play tonight. But that's the team I think the Eagles are going to have to figure out a way to beat when it counts. And if he's holding on to the football like that, it's probably not going to go well. So, take these opportunities to get better at it so that when the big moment arrives, you're locked in and you're capable of doing it. So, look, you're right. It's hard to complain about this game, but if that's the one nitpick I'm going to make, that's it, because I think it's about more than this game. Of course, it didn't matter in this game. The Cowboys weren't equipped to do anything about it. They threw for 66 yards. I don't know where the Eagles came in. I forget. They were like 5th or 6th. Maybe. I think they were 5th in rush defense, 7th in pass defense. I think they're going to be number 1 after this week.
Oh, John, they could be number 1 in total defense here.
66 yards passing. I mean, yeah. And look, they're playing great. Even Bryce Hall got involved, made a play. Zander, you were asking about it.
Yeah, baby.
Did they give him the sack?
They did. I think I read they gave him the sack. I'd have to double check the box score.
Yeah,
but
I just looked at it. They gave him the sack. So we got a full sack from Bryce Hall.
Week 9. Here we go.
Yeah.
10, Big Sills. Week 10. You're giving him a week
10. Well, he had 1.5. So now he's got 2.5 coming. Who knows?
Yeah, but John,
a lot to like on defense.
You're dead on with this, John. You're not really looking at the opponent you're playing right now. You're looking at what you're going to look like in December and January when championship football has to be played. And you can look at it like this. I mean, Zander, you said hard to nitpick. No, it's not hard to nitpick.
No, I was speaking specifically about
as you get closer, Zander, towards the postseason, you're going to have to be playing great football because you're going to be taking on better coaching. You're going to be taking on better players, and you're going to be looking at one mistake. The Super Bowl is the greatest example of that. When the Eagles lost that Super Bowl in Arizona, Well, there were 2 plays that cost them that game, really. 2 critical plays. And when you get into the postseason, John, right? I mean, those plays are what separate you going to an NFC title or to a Super Bowl. And you can't be giving up sacks. They had 5 sacks they surrendered in the first half. I mean, against an awful football team that couldn't stop
Let me ask
the run.
both of you. Let me ask both of you on the Jalen, with holding the ball. How much of it can be put on the long developing play designs and the routes for the wide receivers? A lot of talk about the sun today, which I thought was a little overblown. I mean, look, I know the sun's bad out there. Dak Prescott plays 9 games a year there, 8 games a year there for 8 years. I mean, he's not.
Well, they haven't won since Detroit last year, so I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm saying though, for a big enough, how much do you put on the routes though from the receivers with holding on to that ball? A lot of people say, the Eagles don't give them any, short routes or quick slants or anything like that.
That is, I think AJ Brown might be the best slant receiver in football.
Yes.
So, it's tough when you're not there. I can't really see the plays developing. When I see the all 22 later in the week, you'll get a better indication. But, Jalen likes to wait for things to develop, and he's not. And again, people are going to take this as an insult, but who cares? I mean, I'm so tired. I mean, people see me and Jalen react. He doesn't hate me. I don't hate him. We actually like each other. I'm sick of these morons who say I don't like him. I like him a lot. That doesn't mean I can't tell you what's going on. And what's going on is he and the 4th and 3 was a perfect example last week, which everyone had a problem. That's a touchdown, man. If that ball's out on time, that's a touchdown. AJ's got his guy beat, and it just came out late.
John,
and all of a sudden,
that was a touchdown today too on that pick in the end zone if he gets it out in front. I mean,
it was. I thought watching it again when I see the all 22, that was a great play by Diggs as well. I'll get a better indication because I think Diggs he doubled back off where he's supposed to be. So he's one of those instinctive guys. And Romo kind of mentioned it a little bit where he didn't know. Slay does that to him in practice. He'll bait him at times. And veteran guys who understand how to make plays can do that to quarterbacks. And you think somebody's open, they're really not open. Diggs is one of the best in the NFL at doing that. So I have to see that, but overall, look, he's not the kind of guy who's going to throw receivers open. He likes to throw to open receivers. And I think that's the problem. That's a lot, in college, you see that. You see guys are very comfortable because the receivers are always open at high-level schools. And then in the NFL, when you're open for a split second, like that AJ play, that's why that is wide open in the NFL. And in a second and a half, it closes. That is wide open. And you got to be on it, and you got to throw it on time, and if you do that, stuff like that's going to be successful. And too often, Jalen's late, and you've seen it time and time again. It's not this game. It's not just last game. You go all the way back to week 1 in Green Bay. That was the issue. Not in Green Bay and Brazil, but you get my point. It's an issue. I think anybody who sticks their head in the sand is sticking their head in the sand. That's not an issue.
Yeah,
John,
go ahead.
Let me ask you something here, guys. John, do you think after that injury in the first half, and I don't know the extent, you'll know more when you get over there tomorrow, when it came to Barkley, do you think they pulled him more back in the second half? He had a ton of carries in the first half of that game. And do you think they pulled him back and you saw more Gainwell in the second half because they didn't seemingly want to put him back out there a lot in the second half of that football game when they knew that they had that game in control because there was more Gainwell in the second half of this football game. And do you think that was maybe just a pull back?
No, they pulled him at the end of the first half because he hurt his arm on the fumble trying to dive for it and try to get it back on the Micah Parsons sack, the forced fumble. That's where he got hurt. In the beginning of the second half, they were running him very effectively. And then it became, all right, game's over. And then it was the smart thing. And this is when Zander asked me, is he going to hit 125? I'm like, this might be the game he's not going to hit 125, not because he couldn't, but because they're going to pull him. To save him for an early. Remember, they're playing Thursday. So I think that's what happened. But he's banged up. He certainly had the big bandage on the inner arm. He's banged up coming in with his legs. So, but this is what we're talking about with all the touches. And they were enabled because of the blowout nature of the game. He had 14 runs and a couple receptions, just the one reception. So 15 touches. That's awesome. You can get out.
Yeah.
You don't have to play him. So why play him? That's perfect as far as what the Eagles wanted. So now I mean the fourth quarter, they went into the fourth quarter. It was 28-6, and I think Elliott kicked a field goal like 2 or 3 plays into the fourth quarter to even extend it further. So, yeah, just that's garbage time, man. Just get them out. But I think if you look at the second drive, because the first drive that came out the third quarter, and it was a run to Barkley. They started with Barkley, but it only gained, it might have lost a yard, I forget. And that was a couple incomplete passes. And then
he had a couple nice runs in that.
No, the second drive, it was all Barkley. It was Barkley.
Yeah, I was going to say
the first 3 was Barkley. And then they put Gainwell in. He got 13 yards. So it was all Barkley in that second drive, and they scored. That ended up being the Johnny Wilson touchdown. And that's it. That's pretty much ball game. And at that point, you could be really, really conservative with them. But even after that, the third drive was all Barkley as well, because that was the Ben Van Sumeren drive, where they were going, double team with Landon and Cam and Ben Van Sumeren with the lead blocks. So, and then they pulled him.
No doubt. Guys, let's talk about the defense a little bit here. They give up 146 total yards. Many are pulling out, Big Sills, as you know. The no holes defense slogan. Sills, what'd you make of that today? Is there, do you get amped at that performance as a defense, or do you kind of look at your opponent and just say, we handled our business as we should have?
The only reason that I'm pulling things away from this game and the games after the bye, because there have been absolute horseshit football teams that they've played outside of the Bengals. Now, if you were a veteran football team with a bunch of guys on that side of the ball, I wouldn't be as hyped, because we still don't know what the ceiling is for these young guys that they have back there in the secondary. And for me, I'm watching young guys coming along and getting better. Hey, this is Quinyon Mitchell's 9th NFL football game. And for him to be playing like that at this level, he's playing at a level right now where if you are management, you're exceptionally excited. John mentioned Zach Bond never having played. Hey, man, guess what? I don't give a crap who the opponent is. I'm watching a guy develop and get better and better and better. I'll tell you what, Jalen Carter played an absolutely sensational game. And what I love about it, too, last week he only didn't play in 2 snaps. You're seeing him play in more snaps and being able to look a little bit more professional each and every single week. He's kind of playing a little like Fletcher. Fletcher knew how to be a pro. If you had a 65-play defensive effort, he could play 60 of them because he knows how to prepare his body. You're starting to see a lot of players there. I will say this. Nakobe a little bit out of position again, some false steps that were in that game, but nothing that could kill you in that game. But against really good offenses, that's going to be a problem in pass defense a little bit. Zach Bond is covering everything up in there and doing really well. I think Slay being in and out of the lineup, being injured, I think that's something to think about. I like the fact with Isaiah Rodgers getting more reps. Remember something in today's NFL, you're not going to get a whole bunch of physicality any longer at the cornerback position. What you're going to get is they want to keep everything underneath. This has become, I talked to you before this, John, and I'm starting to come around with this. Those days of the Ravens defense or the Bucks defenses, those days are gone, man. It's keep everything underneath. Don't give up plus 25. Shrink the zone down with good linebacker play. Get edge rushers and get 2 defensive tackles that are capable of stopping the run. You're starting to see this defense, again, start to put logs together. And what I mean by that is they look the same every week. They're not playing up. They're not playing down. And what I like about what I'm seeing with the defense, John, they look every week now, whether you're a good team or a bad team, they're doing exactly what you need to do to bad teams. You're keeping teams in the NFL under 150 yards 2 consecutive weeks like that. That is freaking unbelievably great for development. A lot has to be given to Vic Fangio because he has really implemented a lot with those young players, and they are buying this.
Yeah.
No doubt. Johnny Mac, your take on that defense, man.
Boy, you can't say enough about that defense. And I can't say enough about Zach Bond, who's getting the podium treatment down in Dallas, evidently.
Good. He deserves it, man. He really
He
does.
is something else.
Yeah, he has been just I can't say enough. Starting with Green Bay, I called it one of the most mesmerizing performances I've ever seen, and he keeps doing it. He had one bad game. He played poorly against Atlanta. Everything else has been off the charts. But the one thing the Eagles defense is doing is they're taking advantage of these bad teams. Yes. It's going to be tougher when they do base, and you're going to see it starting Thursday night. Washington's not explosive, but you have a quarterback that can beat you with his legs, similar to what the Eagles offer to opposing. They're going to have to deal with that. And that makes it far more difficult. Then you get the Rams with Matthew Stafford, who knows how to play the position. Plus, Cooper Kupp is back. Puka Nacua is back. So he has his receivers back. Maybe the most underrated player, running back, I think, in football is Kyron Williams. They're a good offense. And then Baltimore, who I think is the best player in the world right now. I really believe that.
Yep.
Playing at a super high level. And you're going to know more about this defense. But it's good. It's good. Is it great? I'll tell you what. I have a lot of respect.
It could be, John. It could be great.
Yeah.
It could be.
I have a lot of respect for defenses that seize the moment and don't let teams like this breathe. And they didn't let them breathe. And I don't know what more you can ask for than, they gave up 146 total yards, 2.6 yards per offensive play.
Sorry for laughing.
I know. They threw for 66 gross yards, 1.5 average gain per pass play. You never see that.
Ever.
You never see that. It's tough to criticize this defense.
Holy shit, the Cowboys suck.
Well,
that's true.
You know what, though? But to what John's point was, Zander, and again, they do. But, okay, you put them to sleep. You put them in a sleeper hold. I mean, you did exactly.
Oh, no, there's no doubt. I'm more reveling in the fact that the Cowboys are as bad as we really thought they were. I mean, they are a bad football team.
That was even worse. I think I said 31-16. I expected a pretty easy win.
We were all pretty close.
I expected them to rest players in the fourth quarter. But this is even easier than I thought. And a lot of that had to do with the defense, really, more so than the offense.
I had 31-10, and they didn't even reach 10 or really even get close.
No.
People talk about the edge rush. We talked about it a little bit in the pregame show, but the group as a whole is playing really well. Dan just mentioned Nakobe Dean, some issues in coverage, but he makes the big plays. Getting better.
He is
getting better at it.
Yep.
Reed Blankenship may be the most underrated player on this team. CJ got an interception. Maybe that gets him going. The two rookie corners have been spectacular. You're right about Slay going in and out of the lineup. Two pass defenses today, although one hit him in the back of the shoulder pad because it was such a bad throw. I don't know. It's tough to say bad things about this defense right now, because they're not even. The only way I said Dallas even had a chance was to play a super clean game, which they did not do.
5 turnovers.
But
that's the opposite of clean.
Even if they did, there's no way they were moving the football against this defense, not with those quarterbacks. And that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, they really shut them out today. Now, like I said, I don't know whether to put more on the defense and kind of be excited about that, or more that Cowboys team is just putrid. But at the end of the day, we moved to 7-2, and we go first in the NFC East now. Big Sills.
I'll tell you flat out here too, man. I mean, I said it coming out of college. Trey Lance is like one of the worst prospects I've ever seen. You know what I had to do?
Cooper Rush, Dan.
How about this, John? Okay. Hey, John. I remember having to go back and find his highlights during the COVID year, like on YouTube, because he played one game. And then like the year before that, he played a couple. And I'm like, hey, man, I guess the one thing that you have to learn, be wary if you go to North Dakota State and try to get yourself a quarterback, because that kid is terrible, man. I mean, and you gave a 3rd rounder up for that guy?
John Lynch, it's funny because John Lynch has been, let's be honest, he's built one of the best rosters in football for 4 or 5 years now. And he missed with his greatest pick. And he missed in
that draft.
And he missed miserably. And very few people talk about it because he found a quarterback magically in the 7th round. So it doesn't matter where you find the players as long as you find the players. It happened with the Eagles at a less high-profile position. They wanted Andre Dillard to be their left tackle, and they gave him every opportunity. And he bailed, and they got Jordan Mailata in the 7th round.
Hey, John, check this out. I know John real well. And John said that Kyle Shanahan, when they drafted Trey Lance, the father, Mike Shanahan, said this: if you're going to take somebody like that and put up 3 number 1s, which basically it ended up costing them, make sure you draft yourself a quarterback that you think can play from the pocket. That's exactly what they did with RG3.
RG3,
and that's when they got in the 4th round or 5th round. That's when they got Cousins, just to hedge your bets in a way. So that's kind of what they did in that draft, was to hedge their bets a bit.
Yeah, they had to, but I think people get caught up. Look, it's never good when you miss on a 1st round pick, because if you don't fix it, you're going to get fired. So he was able to fix it for San Francisco. And by the way, now people should be more scared of San Francisco.
Yeah.
Because
Purdy was great today.
Yeah, and Christian's back. So that's a team nobody's going to want to play if they make it into the playoffs. So you got to root for Arizona and the Rams and everybody else. But
hey, John, the greatness of Jonathan Gannon. I mean, the team is 6-4. Kyler Murray was 22-26.
Yeah, Kyler's, people forget Kyler was a good freaking player.
Yep.
He's starting to play like it too.
You bet he is.
Yeah, he's better than most people understand. But I mean, Arizona's doing a good job. But if I had to bet on the NFC West, I'm betting on San Francisco. Till somebody beats them, till somebody vanquishes them, I have to bet on them. And we'll see how it shakes out. But if I'm everybody, Eagles, Lions, Packers, Vikings, whoever makes the playoffs, I don't want to see San Francisco.
I think people don't want to see the Eagles either. We're a tough team to play.
No,
And John, you bring up
I agree
Jalen's
with that.
resiliency all the
I agree
time,
with that.
and I give
I
you
agree with
tons of
that.
credit because it really is true. You watch Jalen make some boneheaded plays where people are tweeting about it, and
Oh, yeah.
and you're like, "What the hell?" And then he comes back always, without a doubt, and
Yeah.
makes a great play and somewhere in the game. And he's been consistent with doing that, man. He'll have his moments that are bad, but he never
Yeah,
stops
I
coming.
always
And I think that's
it's
one of the
funny you
Eagles'
say
best
that
assets.
because I always get and you always the word I use is relentless. He's relentless. He doesn't care.
Right.
Um, and people will always tweet that bad throw, bad turnover. In the first half, they were saying it 2 turnovers, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he's coming. He's not going to let that waver. Like Sam Darnold today, he just had one of those days, man. He threw 3 interceptions in the red zone, I think. And when he does that, it's like, Jesus, every time he drops back, you're expecting something bad to happen. Jalen, you make a bad play, and then he's going to go win a game, which is very rare because most people let that affect them, that they're having a bad day. But he's relentless. I can't think of another word to describe it. You have to play 60 minutes against Jalen Hurts. Not today because he was out because it was a blowout. But you get my point.
Boy, I'll tell you too, John, if you're the Eagles, man, blowing that Cowboy team out, you made a comment, John, about the Lions, and Jimmy told me this years ago. The number one thing that you do is to build your football team, most importantly, to win your division.
Yeah.
You're building your team to beat the Giants, the Cowboys, and Washington. That's where it has to start. Looking down the line with the Niners and the Lions, that's great, but you got to take care of business first. And boy, I'll tell you what, Washington's coming on. That's going to be a great rivalry over the next 5 years, I think, between Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts. You're going to see something special there. I don't know what Dallas and how Dallas will look in the next couple of years. The Giants are probably going to fire their head coach and possibly their general manager and go in a different direction there. I mean, they have really done a nice job at taking the command of the NFC East. I mean, both sides of the football. And, John, the thing that I liked, and I can't believe when you were in the pit that Vic said this when you guys were dressing him. There were 11 guys a week ago that were under the age of 27 or younger. And I'm like,
Yeah,
freaking unbelievably great. And you heard Vic say, well, I'll take experience more than age. And I sat there and I went, when Jimmy was building that defense back in the day with the Cowboys, they had the youngest football team on defense winning those Super Bowls. They were 25 years and younger. I'm sorry, man, but if you got a team that's young like that, you basically have flipped the script from going from old in 22, John, to basically going younger in 24. And they've done it in basically 16 months, which is incredible.
Yeah, no doubt. Howie Roseman deserves some credit for that for sure. John, if you have a response to that, go ahead.
well, I'm giving Vic credit for the defense.
Yeah.
Because that Howie gets credit for the offense.
Yeah, but Howie has put some good young players on that team, and now credit to Vic, he's gotten the most out of them.
He gets credit for the draft picks because obviously, no doubt about it. And more than if you talk about Jalen Carter, hey, I give Jeffrey Lurie credit for that because a lot of people didn't, in Chicago being most notable, who I ripped constantly. They passed on the guy twice because they didn't have any balls to say we can bring him in our building and put him on the right path. And the Eagles were like, all right, we'll take him. You want to hand him out?
They look like they could have used him today after getting run over.
We'll take him. And Quinion looks like a great pick, and Cooper looks like a great pick. Again, nobody thought Zach, but I don't care. Nobody. People could say whatever they want. They paid him $1.6 million. Nobody was knocking down Zach Bond's door. And how we wanted to use him as an edge rusher.
He's a special teams guy, John. I mean, which, like you said, it's almost. I'm not saying he's James Harrison, But all the times that James Harrison was cut and was a free agent with Baltimore, people forget he was in Baltimore.
Yeah.
The Steelers even cut him. All of a sudden, you look around, you're like, that's him? And now you're seeing this kind of thing here with Zach Bond. Like, John, I think what people are not getting, what you're saying, is that you don't see that. A guy who's been in the league 5 years, all of a sudden he looks like he's Ray Lewis. You don't see that, man. I mean, that's so uncommon to see something like that.
And we kind of went through this with JG in 2022, where everybody had a career year. Now, there's a bunch of young guys, but everybody's playing above what they're supposed to be playing at, with maybe the potential exception of Jalen Carter, because he's supposed to be at that level, and CJ Gardner-Johnson, maybe Avonte Maddox before he got benched, but nobody expects rookies to play like Mitchell and DeJean. Nobody expects Bond. Sweat is back to where he was playing at that type of level. Brandon Graham's having, his best year in a few years because he's playing more. And Big said, you know what? I'm going to play him. He's good. I'm going to play him. That factors in. Milt Williams, maybe it's the contract, maybe not. He's never played better. Bryce Hoff being another exception, but the vast majority of the guys are playing at a higher level than what they were supposed to.
And John, that what you said is, in my opinion, I think you nailed it when you said, let me tell you something. Nakobe Dean is benefiting from Vic Fangio. That's his pedigree, being a linebacker coach. Zach Bond, one of the things that I heard him say again when you guys were questioning him, and I never thought this before, he goes, how I find some of these guys to be able to plug them in and play. If I think you're a good special teams player, you pretty much have a good shot at being a good safety or a good linebacker. And those are the guys that I look for when I'm trying to develop certain players. And there's no question, Bond was a hell of a player, special teams-wise, in New Orleans. Nobody ever said that he wasn't. And by the way, for the fact that Isaiah Rodgers, if you go and think about that too, John, he was a heck of a player in Indianapolis as a special teams player too. So you're starting to see those guys, they kind of fit the mold. Remember too, when you recruited and drafted your two corners, what did they play in college? They were zone corners. So they understood that the kind of concept that Vic brought in. Zander, as much as Howie has signed these guys, you have to find the right coordinator also to plug this all
no doubt. Yep.
And make that mat work. And that's what Vic has done. Remember all the heat, John, people were giving him? No pressure.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's part of it too, because, there was, I saw somebody talking about the fourth down stuff last week. And and they were mentioning, and rightfully so, they were mentioning that coaches are worried about getting asked about these situations. And they tend to be more conservative than they should be. This is a more analytically driven person. But a lot of coaches are afraid of getting those questions because it makes them look bad. And if they look bad, they're going to lose their job. It's understandable. Vic doesn't give a shit. He's like, he got asked the question about Zach Bond. Did you ever worry about that nobody else in the league looked at him like an off-ball linebacker?
No.
He's like, I don't even think he knew that. He's like, I just look at the guy and that's what he looks like to me. And he's got the courage of his own convictions. He's done it for so long. He's got the self-confidence to do that. So we always have this debate with veteran coaches, younger coaches. That was a big thing when Nick Sirianni first got here. And we were all looking at this coaching staff and saying, where's the experience? And they ended up being very successful early on. And now it's back to, you need experience with Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. And sometimes people will say, well, the game has passed so-and-so by. He's too old. I don't know. Vic's pretty good, man. And I'm the first to say I'm not in love with the scheme, the actual scheme, because I prefer a more aggressive style of defense. But it's hard to argue with the success they're having right now.
No doubt. Let's get to our first commercial break.
Suck it up. It's not
no
a
doubt. Let's get
if
to our
you're
first
looking for
commercial
Jim
break.
Johnson- If you're looking for Jim Johnson defense, you're not going to see it any longer in the NFL today.
No, you're not. Let's get to our commercial break. I want to thank everybody for being here in the chat right now. All of our super chatters, we appreciate you guys. I'm putting
No
you guys
holds
on the screen.
defense, huh, Zander? All right, man.
And I will get back to all. I will read all of your super chats later on in the show. We appreciate each and every one of you guys checking in. We'll have John for another 20 minutes or so. We'll come back. We talked about Quinyon Mitchell there. I got some stats on Quinyon Mitchell. Forget being a good rookie. This dude is playing like a great, maybe an all-pro level corner right now in his rookie year, and we will talk about that when we come back on the JAKIB Postgame Show. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Hit that like button. We'll be back in 3 minutes.